Is this working? I've never done this before. All right. Hi everyone. Welcome back to my channel. So today's going to be a bit different. I wanted to record this at home, not while riding, because I wanted to make this a kind of more spontaneous and maybe more emotional interaction with you guys instead of having a voiceover. Previously, I made a video about why I think the EUC is probably going to die a slow death. Now, by slow, I don't know how slow. Could be 5 years, could be 10 years, could be longer than that. If you haven't watched that video, I suggest watching that first. I'll put a link in the description. In my video, I brought some Google search data, which suggests that EUCs actually haven't been very popular, in terms of searches at least, compared to the other PEVs available, such as e-bikes, e-scooters, one-wheels, and so on. And in the past 10 years, the searches hasn't gone up. It peaked in August of 2015, and then it just stayed there. I have a bad feeling about that. And the reason is because if the searches hasn't gone up in the last 10 years, despite there being no regulations, I don't know what's it gonna look like in the next coming years, especially when PEVs are starting to get banned all over the world. And there are some exceptions in terms of where some places are more permissive and others are more prohibitive, but you get the point. It looks like a global trend where governments everywhere are starting to crack down on PEVs, and I hope that it doesn't happen, but it looks like EUCs might get caught up in a crossfire. Yeah, today I'm making this part 2 video to respond to some of your comments, some of your negative comments, particularly one about AI. It's completely irrelevant. I don't know why that came up, but I think it deserves a good response. So yeah, let's talk about the first comment. Right, so I hope you guys can see this. This is from Traveling Aaron, which I will now refer to as Aaron. Sorry, it's a long comment. So first of all, thank you, Aaron, for taking the time to write this down, type this down. So I'm going to start with this paragraph here to begin with. So it says, I disagree with so much in this video. I can understand how people in places that are dealing with bans in their locality would have such pessimistic view. However, like Johnny Go Vroom's response, I see growth in my area, which is great. It's really, really positive. I ride with a very large group of PEV riders. More and more people are showing up on EUC, including some people under 18. This is definitely not just attracting the middle-aged people. I also live where we can ride year-round. Oh, you're rubbing it in, are you? It likely makes a difference. There's a lot more motorcycle riders in Florida, so Aaron is from Florida, than in places with snow for obvious reasons. Okay, so let's talk about Aaron's response, and I think Johnny has also mentioned something similar, that he disagrees with me because when he goes out and looks around his neighborhood, or when Aaron goes out and looks around his neighborhood, he finds that the EUC is more popular, there's more uptake, more and more young riders are joining the scene, and this is all really, really positive. But anecdotes don't compare to Google search data. I'm sorry. I'll give you a good example. You can go out right now and tell me that it's summer, but I can go out right now and I can tell you that it's winter, because in New Zealand, it is winter. But your anecdotes and my anecdotes are both correct, but it doesn't tell us what global climate is looking like. So look, I think this is the problem when we talk about EUCs in general, is that people like to bring their anecdotes into the discussion, which in my opinion has limited value, but also can be very divisive. As far as anecdotes go, they're really emotionally charged. In medicine, there's, different hierarchies of evidence. Right up the top, there's meta-analysis, systematic reviews, and randomized controlled trials, and prospective retrospective studies and things like that. But then right at the bottom of the hierarchy of evidence are what we call case studies, and those are essentially medical anecdotes. It's when doctors come across this interesting case and choose to write it up. These anecdotes, these case studies, they're not completely useless. They are considered the lowest level of evidence, simply because you're not supposed to use that to inform your worldview. Case studies are good to inform further research. That's what it's good for. But I can also understand why, some cases never proceed beyond case studies because they're just so rare. You can't recruit enough people to do a proper study. And I have a feeling that EUCs are kind of like that. It's so hard to actually study it on mass, study it on some level, a number that actually makes meaningful sense. So the best kind of quantitative data that I could find was Google searches. But if you have better data, numerical data, not anecdotes, not stories, that can inform me where the trend is going. And I love to see it. I love for my data to be challenged. Bringing anecdotes to the table really doesn't do much for me at all. I'm sorry, Aaron. Right, and let's keep going. So the next point, and this is what Aaron says. So this is the next thing that Aaron says. The EUC is most certainly fills a role that other largest PEVs don't. I can't. Sorry, I'm gonna screw this up a bit. I can't toss most e-bikes or e-scooters without folding them in my trunk. I also can't walk bike scooters, one wheels through my local university or grocery store, meaning I don't have to find a way to keep it safe while in class or shopping. The form factor alone opens up a lot of spaces that large e-bikes and scooters have trouble with. And this is a fairly commonly held view amongst the riders in my group. Again, in my group, you see, this is where anecdotes becomes a bit, it's unhelpful. The scooters are the most dangerous PEVs by far. Tiny wheels and tires are super problematic. Yeah, I don't disagree with that. The idea that you would have adopted the e-scooter as something safer seems like an experienced perspective. I would argue the EUC is inherently better in many ways. Look, Aaron, I agree with you in a lot of these things. There's one point that EUC riders keep coming back to over and over again, and that is the portability factor. It's portable, it's portable, it's portable. But that's not the point I'm trying to make. Okay, if you watch my previous video, I am saying that portability on its own does not drive sales. It doesn't, There's just so many other options, and not everybody needs or wants portability. For example, if someone's worried about theft at the grocery store, they can drive, or the theft of their bicycle at the grocery store. They can drive. They can have their groceries delivered. There's just so many options that wouldn't require someone going out to buy a new mode of transportation, spend a couple of weeks learning it, buying all this armor and investment, and then fall down a couple of times just to get groceries. People just don't do that. The EUC has a lot of benefits, but what really drives sales is familiarity, ease of use, and price. I think those are the three main ones. Now, do I have data to back that up? I'll talk about that later. It's not like perfect data, but there is some studies around this. But the EUC is not familiar. It's not easy. It's not cheap. So unless there's a very specific reason why you need portability at the grocery store, there's really not a lot of reason why you would invest in an EUC. Okay, so that's kind of my point. I don't disagree with you that EUCs are portable, they're small, they're niche, they're beautiful. It doesn't drive sales. That's the point. Okay. Right, let's move on. So here in this paragraph, Aaron is saying, I'm not sure I agree that Begode has any right to be kept around. Begode, in my view, is one of the main reasons the industry is viewed as being scary. From the way they pitch them, always chasing faster speeds, like it's the only goal, lack of quality assurance, blah, da, da, da. There's no wonder that people see all the cutout crash videos, assume it's more dangerous, as if you ride smart and buy a wheel known for reality. Okay, good. Now, first of all, I declare my biases. I ride a Begode Master Pro. I quite like it. So, you can say that I'm a Begode fangirl in some ways, but I also want to say there's some problems with that argument. During a time when there's still a lot of cutouts, I would say that's across the board for every other brands. Maybe Begode wheels were more likely to cut out for poor quality control, but it also reflects the kind of state of technology at the time. Cutouts are not entirely new to this community. Most people ride slowly and carefully to avoid that. It happens only to people who are pushing the limits, right? The other thing I want to point out is, for better or for worse, Begode is part of the ecosystem, and they drive competition, they drive innovation, they drive other companies to be, to improve. They make the mistakes, so to speak, so other companies don't. You get what I'm saying? I think whether or not Begode should remain on the market, it should be left to the consumers rather than an individual person's opinion. Some people like Begode, some people don't. I'm kind of neutral on this one. All right, let's move on. So in this paragraph, Aaron mentioned, I think the lack of new wheels being rushed to the market shows a stabilizing in the industry, not a death. Well, you could be right there. For a while, it seems like they were just throwing stuff at a wall and seeing if it stuck. Yep. And they figured out what the market is asking for and not. The amount of innovation on the Zeno and all the other companies seems to be making minor tweaks, shows what I think will be the direction moving forward. NOSFET has the right idea of making wheels for everyday user, not the extreme enthusiast that you mentioned. I have personally seen a number of EUCs doing DoorDash as well, so it's okay, that's fine. So I think Aaron makes another good point here that the slowing down of the release of new wheels could actually be a good thing, like the market is maturing, and therefore EUC makers are not rushing to make new wheels. Look, historically speaking, I think there's only one company that is Begode that usually rushes to make all these wheels. I don't know what their thinking is behind that, but most other companies don't do that. So when you say the market is maturing, is it just Begode maturing? I don't know. However, it's the opposite is also possible without any data to claim otherwise. The opposite is that the EUC companies could just be pivoting. Begode, if you go to their website, they sell e-bikes. InMotion sells scooters. I think it's possible that they diversify rather than just focusing on EUCs because it's such a small market, and that's why the slower releases of new wheels could either be, yes, they're maturing, but also by that they're kind of more apprehensive about investing more resources into developing and releasing a new wheel when nobody would buy because the country bans it or whatever. The other thing I want to talk about is the fact that, well, what does it mean when you say the market is maturing and finally giving users what they want? If you watched that video from Sean's interview with the Leaperkim makers, there was something that stood out. It turns out that the market, according to lubricant makers, not according to me, okay? The market wants bigger, faster wheels, okay? That's why they came up with the Oryx. That's why they revamped the Lynx. They make big wheels because the profit margins are bigger and the market is better. Small wheels just don't get a lot of sales according to them. It's sort of like a lot of people say, yeah, we want it to be small and portable. It sounds to me, at least, that that's a very loud minority within the EUC community, which is already a minority amongst all the other PEV users. Whereas what really drives sales and profits for these companies are bigger, larger wheels, at least according to Librakim. Begode is releasing the X Max, and its specs are just that. Yeah, it's a big wheel. All the wheels today are very big. The Zeno is also like a 20-inch wheel. It's not small. It's not like the tiny A5. I don't know what's the market for those kind of wheels. So yeah. Right. So moving on. In this paragraph, this is what it said. All of this said, I'm open to owning that I might be a little defensive about my beloved sport. Well, thank you, Aaron. Thank you for admitting and owning up that you were defensive. And with that passion comes the viewpoint that this negative commentary about the industry dying by Kujiros and people who agree with me is not doing us any favors. Okay. I would highly encourage people to seek out the content of other EUC writers who aren't all doom and gloom. There are plenty out there who are doing a great job painting the sport in a positive light. We have to be ambassadors of our community as EUC writers if we want to grow into something more. If we fail to take responsibility, oh, you brought out the R word, responsibility, for not making the industry look bad, we just look like jerks complaining about it not going well. Okay. Aaron, there is a lot to unpack here, and I have to say, oh, you hurt my feelings. You hurt my feelings a bit when you talk about this. Aaron, hey, how is it irresponsible for me to bring data to the table and talk about it? Okay. In fact, I'd argue that it is, relatively speaking, more irresponsible to pollute the scene with everybody's anecdotes. It's like this in Germany, it's like that in Sweden, it's like that somewhere, it's like that, and we can't agree on anything. How is it irresponsible? Okay, I don't see myself as being irresponsible. And furthermore, gosh, there's such a lot to put on one content creator. If my video brought down the entire EUC industry, first of all, I'd be very surprised and also very impressed with the power that I wield, but also very unimpressed with how resilient the EUC industry really is. There's nothing me or Kuji can do individually that's gonna affect sales globally. Honestly, there isn't. What a politician does, a policymaker does, or a lawmaker does matters way more than what I can do. Look, it's not like I don't welcome optimism. I encourage optimism. I made a video about burnout a while ago, and this is what I tell my patients sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes I tell my patients, look, even if there is no reason to be optimistic, like the world looks shit and dark and gloomy, it's good to have hope. It's good to have faith that tomorrow is gonna be better, because sometimes that's all you can do. So it's not that I'm against optimism. I welcome that, but also to put so much responsibility on content creators is unfair. It's really unfair. It's kind of what the green argument is. You can be as environmental as possible as a person, but your carbon footprint cannot compete with major oil companies. No, it doesn't even compare. Okay, so please don't put this on me. Please don't put this on Kuji. Okay. The other thing about responsibility is that, look, I want to challenge you on this. Is it more irresponsible to pretend like everything is okay when it isn't? Or is it positivity all the way off the cliff? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. I think the more responsible thing for both of us to do here is to just go out and gather more data. See if we can find something that informs our worldview a bit better, other than our anecdotes, right? Okay, now moving on to the second comment here. Now, this is a really cute one. Jarahelt said, I'm okay with it being a niche. I wouldn't feel as special if I didn't get the crazy looks and reactions. Yeah. I think I understand what that means. So look, for those first time viewers, I make this very clear in my previous video. I'm a trans woman, and I know what it like what it feels like to be special, okay? And I can tell you it's not all good. Sometimes it feels great, but other times it sucks. It sucks to stand out. Sometimes you just want to blend in. You want to avoid all the eyes and all the staring. But I have to say, it fills me with joy whenever I ride past a school and all the kids are yelling at me, "Whoa, look at that, it's so cool." But it's not a good feeling when there's police cars around me, okay? Oh my gosh, that gave me a panic attack, thinking about it. Yeah, it's not all good. That's all I'm trying to say. All right, moving on. So this is a third comment, a very good comment, brought on by Planarian EUC. Thank you for taking the time to comment. So a Planarian said, anyway, why this EUC has to be mainstream mass adoption? What will be to gain slash benefit if 3 from 5 rides in I think he meant if the 3-year-olds and 5-year-olds rides in EUC. There's a lot of benefit from that. From your neighbor, from your 5 neighbors, and do 3 of them have motorbikes now? I don't know what that means. Why wingsuit cliff diving is not mainstream? I think by that you meant base jumping, like base jumping with a parachute or a wingsuit. Yeah, okay. So I think this is a great topic. Let's talk about it. So the answer is no. I hope I haven't given you that impression from my previous video that we need to be mainstream. I think it would be unusual, very bizarre, if the EUC overtook the bicycle. I don't know how that would happen. In what world would that happen? Maybe in North Korea, when the supreme leader suddenly decided that bicycles are not cool anymore and everybody needs to ride unicycles. Which is bizarre. In everywhere else, people are always going to prefer 2 wheels over 1 wheel. So what? So that raises a good question. How much adoption should we aim for? What? I think there's no right or wrong answer to this. Now, to be clear, it's impossible to completely eradicate EUCs. There's gonna be one EUC in someone's garage somewhere. You're never gonna get rid of it completely. And likewise, it's never gonna be mainstream. I think what a healthy adoption looks like will vary from location to location. But as long as there is enough adoption to incentivize community, dealerships, repair shops, or even rental, like rental EUC rental companies. Isn't that great? That's such a great idea. So people can just try it without buying it. However, um, there's also a level of adoption which I think it's meaningfully dead. When EUCs are so prohibited that people are only riding in the shadows, riding in their basement, riding in their backyard, riding at night away from the public. I think for me that's a shame. That's when you see sales plummeting, and that's when you see interest start to just kind of drop. It is possible that EUC will evolve into not a daily commuter sort of thing, into just kind of more like extreme sports. But what I know is unsustainable is if EUCs are both unpopular and illegal at the same time. Like, at least base jumping is legal, even though it's not very popular. It's still legal, but you can't be popular. You can't be unpopular and illegal at the same time. I think that is a recipe for disaster in the long run, at least. So that's my view. All right, let's move on to the final weird comment I got. So, in this comment, written by Dr. Mangler, so I do not like your video because it seems like an AI voice. More importantly, you have no real FaceTime with your camera. And in the two videos I've seen, I see a person on a scooter or whatever you call it. So Dr. Mangler is obviously not an EUC rider. I guess he just stumbled upon my video. Helmet on, no face, no lips moving. To me, it feels like AI, and I want to run away to another channel. Every AI channel I come upon, I ban it from being displayed to me in the future. I'm not saying the voice I'm hearing is AI, but sounds like it. That's a deal breaker for me. AI is slop. It has no emotion, and yet people flock to it as if it's some sort of god. I will not have any part of promoting AI slop videos of voiceovers or AI audiobooks. It's trash. It's slop. It's not good for humanity. If that's what's going on here, I want no part of it. Oh boy. Oh boy. Dr. Mangler, I don't know what you're referring to. I was clearly changing my tire in my video so you could see my face. You could see how I'm breaking my back and struggling. And I spoke to a neighbor, so I do have a voice, and this is my voice. And part of the reason why I'm making this video is for your benefit, so you know I'm not AI. But I think we've crossed a threshold that people are now questioning everything they watch on YouTube. I don't know how many content creators out there are using AI for their videos. Recently, my favorite science communicator, Hank Green, was caught using AI. And boy, what a big kind of unnecessary drama that created. If you want to know, I do use ChatGPT sometimes when I'm doing research for my video. I ask ChatGPT a question and I kind of dive deeper into it. That's all. I write a script, as you know. This is more spontaneous. There's no script for this one. But I pass my script through another app called Grammarly to check my grammar. That's all. Otherwise, everything you heard from me is original, including my voice. My voice, yeah, it sounds a bit weird to some people, but this is how I sound. Now, I don't know how to prove to people that I'm not AI other than this. But I heard somewhere that AI, commercial AI voice, doesn't swear. Like, they have this profanity blocker. So for the benefit of everybody, especially for people like Dr. Mangler, I'm gonna break my rules. I'm gonna swear. Okay, I'm not very comfortable doing this, but this is the only way I know to prove that I'm not AI. Okay, Dr. Mangler, are you ready for this? Here it is. Fuck you. How's that? Or go fuck yourself. Okay? I think I can do one better. I can do it in Cantonese. I'm pretty sure AI doesn't do that. In Cantonese, it means "Diu lei lo mo." Okay? There. I hope that clears things up. I'm not AI. I'm a real person. This couch is real. The chicken's real. Well, it's not real, actually. It's a more stuffed animal. Now, before I forget, I thought I'd point out this really interesting study I found. It's called "Do Parents Support E-Bike Use Among Teenagers and Why?" So it's evidence from Vietnam. There is another, I think, an edited version of this article online, but I wasn't able to access that. This is the author's original manuscript. So basically, the study surveyed a couple of hundred teenagers and parents of teenagers in Vietnam about their 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 um, their views and attitudes towards e-bikes. Now, Vietnam is a really interesting place where there is a problem with older teenagers using motorcycles illegally without licensing. So there's a drive to push uh, e-bikes because it's a safer alternative. So there are a couple of things they found that actually makes people adopt the use of e-bikes, and one of them is the perceived ease of use by e-bikes. And there are other things as well, such as utility and a sense of control, but also what's that? Uh, but also things like environmental awareness does not predict the teen's actual behavior. So this is a really interesting little study. Oh, there you go. Our findings confirm that perceived crash risk is an impediment to the independent use of motorized modes, including e-bikes. So this is not surprising. So the ease of use, positive attitude, there's somewhere it says, perceived norms. I think that means familiarity. If it feels familiar to everyone in Vietnam to use e-bikes, then children are more likely to adopt it. So I think from this study, it is some preliminary evidence to suggest that ease of use, familiarity, and of course safety. And when I mean safety, when I mean safety, I mean relative safety. Vietnam is trying to discourage its teenagers from using motorcycles and to use e-bikes instead. But interestingly, ease of use is a much bigger factor in Vietnam when it comes to e-bikes because there's no infrastructure for e-bikes. So it has to be easy to use, whereas in other countries, in Western countries, that's not such a big of a factor. So yeah, I'll put a link to that study in my description. So just have a look. Guys, thank you so much for your comments. I really hope this doesn't ruin our relationship. I really value all my uh, viewers, and I love the EUC. I hope I hope the EUC will continue to grow and become more popular in the coming years. But well, I'm not holding my breath either. And that's all I want to say about this topic for now. As usual, ride safe, everyone. I'll see you in my next video. Goodbye.